Hello, everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire, bringing you the final episode for at least the spell guide portion of The Occultist for the Pathfinder role playing game. And today we are covering transmutation spells. Unfortunately, I've run short on time, so I'm just going to go rolling right on through this. You should all know the warnings by now. Make sure you have your transmutation implements on hand in order to cast your spells at their maximum effect. So, let's go ahead and roll right on through this and try to make decent time if we can. For 0 level spells, we have Mending. Mending's actually a pretty reliable and solid spell option to have. Maybe not something that you're going to be using immediately every day, but when it does come up, it's useful. And I gotta say, I find a frequent use for it, at least whenever I'm playing a spellcaster with access to this particular spell. The casting time is 10 minutes, so not something you're going to be using in combat. The range is 10 feet, although you're probably going to be right up close to whatever it is you're casting on. The target is one object weighing 1 pound per level, and the duration, well, it's an instantaneous effect. And you'll use this spell to repair items, restoring 1d4 hit points to the target object. You remove the broken condition from items if you restore half of their original hit points. Magic items may be repaired if you're at least equal to the item's caster level. So if you're trying to use Mending on an item that was made by a 15th level caster, then you need to at least be 15th level in order to use Mending on it. Otherwise, it will not work. It's beyond you and your magic's ability to fix. Destroyed magic items may be restored using this spell, but they don't keep their enchantments or abilities. Where this is going to be of great use to you is in fixing your own implements or implements that you may find along the way. Say you find a broken chalice that belonged to some great king or some great historical figure or part of some very important religion that once held sway or possibly even still has power to the day your character exists in, you can use this spell to repair it. If your own implements are broken in combat, you can use this to repair it. I would make the argument that because the items are more of a personal or historical significance, they're not relying on the normal means of magic and enchantment per se. I'm thinking something in terms of like a magic sword, something forged by a smith and enchanted by a powerful wizard or cleric. Those are the kinds of magics that would be lost, not necessarily the effect or potency of something like an implement. An implement has its power comes from its history and its significance and the imprint that that kind of psychic resonance has left on such an item. But of course, we have more spells to cover. We have 6 spell levels all the way around here. For first level, we have Lead Blades. Lead Blades is going to be massively useful for you. Casting time is that usual standard action, and the range is personal, and the target is touch, whatever object that you touch. And the duration is for 1 minute per level, so very generous here, especially for a combat-related spell. This is something you can throw down prior to a fight. You increase the damage of a melee weapon you wield by 1 size category. So a two-handed sword does 2d6. Its next size category up is 3d6. No one else may benefit from this effect if they take your weapon. So if you get disarmed and somebody takes this weapon from you, they will not get the effect of this enchantment. If you disarm them back and you take back your weapon and begin using it again, you get the benefit. So very, very useful. Great way of boosting your damage output, especially since we're not relying on a very strength-heavy build in this instance. For level 2, we have Perceive Clues, and this is definitely a great utility spell all the way around, and it's one you're going to make use of a lot. The casting time is a standard action, range is personal, target is self, and the duration is 10 minutes per level. You sharpen and enhance your senses, giving you a +5 competence bonus on perception and sense motive. So the reason why this is useful here is just those perception checks. Those perception checks, every class uses perception. Everybody's going to be making use of it to avoid ambushes, somebody pickpocketing, hidden doors, and the like. So many different effects that need that need the perception skill for to detect. And then sense motive is also going to help make up for your overall lack of the social skills, like, well, the sense motive skill, for example. You're not exactly going to be able to pump this up to its maximum, but this spell will help with that. It'll help with it quite a bit, so that'll be very, very useful. And then at third level, we have the haste spell. It's a standard action to cast. Range is 25 feet plus 5 feet for every 2 levels, and the range is 1 creature per level, no 2 of which may be 30 feet apart. And the duration is 1 round per level. And many of you veterans and also longtime members of the channel will know why haste is effective, but for those of you who may be new here or just taking a dive into this particular character build, you use haste to enhance the speed and reflexes of whichever targets you select, including yourself. Full attack actions will grant another attack, although this will not stack with effects like weapons of speed, for example. All movement increases by 30 feet, so running, climbing, burrowing, swimming, all of those things will boost by another 30 feet. You give a +1 bonus to attack rolls and a +1 dodge bonus to AC and reflex saves. So really incredibly useful, very effective combat spell. Haste is definitely a go-to for most classes. Wizards, sorcerers, occultists, the witch, if I remember correctly, gets this spell. So it's one you definitely do not want to do without, especially since we're looking at having a melee build. You can use this, enhance the abilities of your entire party, and everybody just go to town piling on damage. Then for fourth level spell, this particular spell is incredible. It's right on par with haste in terms of its usefulness, although you're not going to be dealing direct damage with it. It's echolocation, and the casting time is another standard action, and range is personal, target is only yourself, and the duration is another 10 minutes per level. You create high-pitched noises to gain a blind sense out to 40 feet, so long as you aren't deaf or in a zone of silence. You can see invisible creatures with this. You can go through displacement, mirror image, etc. All these different effects that visually impair your ability to locate a target no longer matter because you're hearing where the target's located at using a blind sense with the echolocation effect. Now, this does produce a high-pitched sound, but most creatures don't detect this, aside from creatures like dragons or other creatures with the ability to perceive these kind of high pitches. Some of that may be subject to DM discretion, but overall, it's not going to be a whole lot of creatures that can do that. It's going to mostly be creatures that also have some kind of blind sense that are going to detect and feel this. So that may get you in a tiny bit of trouble, but in comparison to the benefits that you get for being able to see through invisibility using this spell, and it lasts 10 minutes per level, that's definitely a benefit that's well worth the risk in that instance. And going on from there, for your 5th level spell, we have Overland Flight. I really, really like this one. Standard action to cast, range is personal, target is self, and the duration is 1 hour per level. So awesome, durable time limit there. So this spell works as fly, but you gain a bonus on your fly skill equal to your caster level. So you don't have to really worry about pumping up too many points into the fly skill. This is going to help make up for a lot of that. And you can fly at a speed of 40 feet or 30 feet if you're in medium armor or heavier, or carrying a medium load or heavier. You can use this to hustle without taking the standard non-lethal damage as a result, but you still will have to make fortitude saves in order to hustle effectively. So overall, this is a really, really good fly spell. Cast this and be ready to go all day. Avoid traps, reach opponents in hard to reach places, get to wherever your opponents may be. If they're flying, you can go after them. Really, the only risk that you have is if somebody dispels the Overland Flight effect on you and you begin falling. But hopefully, ideally, you should have some kind of a backup option in your back pocket there just for such an instance. So be aware that is a possibility with this. But again, overall, the tactical maneuverability benefits, as well as being able to avoid very dangerous floor traps and pitfalls and other hazardous locations, is very, very useful. And the benefits definitely outweigh the risks for this spell. And then for our 6th level spell, we have Disintegrate. Another great spell to have in your back pocket. The casting time is a standard action, range is 100 feet plus 10 feet per level, and the effect comes out in a ray, and there's a fortitude save for a partial effect. And you fire a green ray from your fingers that disintegrates a 10-foot cube of non-living matter and reduces living targets to dust and particulates. Creatures struck take 2d6 damage per caster level for an incredible maximum of 40d6. Targets reduced to 0 in such a fashion will become dust and leave behind their equipment. The spell will also destroy force effect spells like Wall of Force and Big B's Forceful Hands. Sorry, Pathfinder licensing and all that kind of thing. It's Forceful Hand under Pathfinder. I apologize. It's hard for me to keep that straight sometimes. So this spell will destroy those force effects and other similar spells. Targets that succeed at a fortitude save, however, will only take 5d6 damage, and this will only attack the first target struck. This does not go through and continue on hitting other targets. So the spell is great because it has a lot of utility outside of combat. And even in combat, it's with some clever thinking, you can do a lot of damage. Even though that this is a save or die spell, technically, it's still, I say save or die. It falls under that kind of category, but the thing with the spells like this that allow a fortitude save to avoid being just absolutely obliterated in such a fashion is the fact that 5d6 damage is easily tanked by a lot of creatures by the time that you get this spell. So that's a drawback to it. But it's the target non-living matter portion that is really, really useful for you, even in combat. If you're in ship-to-ship combat, you can use this to just annihilate a huge 10-foot section of the ship's hull right at the waterline. Watch them take on water at an incredible pace, begin listing and sinking. You solve a lot of problems right there. Or collapsing a section of bridge, or pushing, or just not even pushing, just disintegrating and blasting your way through a castle wall. Or collapsing a ceiling. That falling rock damage will do just so much more, and to a wider number of opponents, more than likely. But in those instances where you are targeting a person or a creature, try to aim for ones that have lower fortitude saves, like a lot of wizards and other such casters. And you can not only annihilate them and remove them from the battlefield and reduce your enemy's effectiveness by far, but you'll also leave behind a significant amount of magical equipment, more than likely, which spellcasters are just generally more likely to have. And thus, you'll increase the amount of loot and rewards to divide up amongst you and the rest of your party. But these spells are just the ones I think will be the best bang for your buck. And honestly, with our melee-focused build, the transmutation spells really mesh up real nicely with that. And the fact that the transmutation implements give you some of the best focus powers for being a melee-type character, this all syncs up pretty nicely into making an overall very effective build. And I should also mention here that this also will work for your ranged attackers if you want to be an occultist who attacks with a bow rather than in melee. If you swap out leaden blades for gravity bow does the exact same thing. It treats your ranged weapon as if it were one size category higher. So you'll increase your damage output using the bow, and the fact that you can use Overland Flight to be up overhead, get around behind targets, and negate their cover bonuses, this will help you do a lot of damage and land some very precision hits on targets that would otherwise be very difficult to reach. But, as I said, Transmutation has many more spells than this. What spells do you think you would swap out overall? Or do you feel like this list is relatively comprehensive and complete enough for this kind of a build? Let me know in the comments down below and hit the like button or hit dislike. Let's go ahead and engage in discourse and get the discussion rolling here. And if you want more content, well, good news for you, there are going to be 2 more videos popping up over here. The first up top is something that the almighty Google has decided that you will enjoy. The other is just another video that I've done recently here that I think is going to be fantastic for you. Or hell, If this hasn't been your first stop here at the Gamer's Den, clearly you're enjoying something about the channel, so go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member and be notified the next time I upload more content here to the channel. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you have yourselves a good night.